you so much for joining me on the Creative Awakening Now podcast. I'm your host, David Matters, and I'm here to bring you stories, interviews, and insights relating to the topics of creativity, inspiration, and practice. My intention is to connect with other people who employ a heart-centered approach to the artistic process and to share this profoundly inspiring content with anyone who cares to hear it. I hope you enjoy. This is a dream, and a dream is never the same. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for being here with me today. It's 2 days after Thanksgiving, I believe. So happy Thanksgiving. I wanted to do a short little solo podcast in honor of Thanksgiving and the topic of gratitude. It came, I don't know, to my mind it was a little bit cheesy, a little bit predictable, if you will, to send out something. So I don't know. It seems so empty sometimes, but the feeling of gratitude is a very real thing. And even though the holiday is obviously questionable, and it's got all kinds of negativity attached to it, if you look deep enough, if you look at it in the right kind of way, and you approach it like so many of us do as a time to get together with family and really to be grateful, and really to honor that space, then it is a beautiful thing. And I wanted to touch on something, and really it was more than just the idea of gratitude. I wanted to kind of touch on the idea of gratitude connected with the difficult times, and obviously the tradition of Thanksgiving with all of its difficulties and its sadness and ugliness, genocide, and all the nasty things attached to it traditionally. We still celebrate in spite of that, and this isn't going to go into that. Obviously, that's dark, and we know all too well what that's all about. So I'm going to steer clear of that. But I did want to talk about my personal experience this year. It was interesting. My daughter got very sick, 2 weeks ago or more, and then it got actually really bad the day of Thanksgiving. She got an ear infection and was just miserable. And I had gotten sick about a week before that, and was just trying to push through it. And I was working a lot, working outside in the cold and pushing my body too hard. And then I ended up developing a slight case of bronchitis, I'm pretty sure. And then my partner Jen got sick. So Thanksgiving Day, we didn't go anywhere. We didn't have anyone over. We pretty much were all down and out, feeling very crappy. And we laid low, didn't even hardly go outside, just feeling pretty miserable. But we were together, and it was, it wasn't like a sad day necessarily. It was just a day of recovery, a day of rest. My daughter and I watched a movie together. My partner Jen, at last minute, kind of threw together some really awesome couple little dishes. So we actually had a nice little dinner for the three of us. But it was not the most cheery of Thanksgivings. For a holiday that usually is associated with friends and community and all these things, it was a little sad. But it got me thinking a lot about the idea of being grateful for the difficult times in life. And it's something I think about a lot in my practice, in the Zen tradition. It comes up a lot, of just the idea of, you learn so much more from the difficult times. You grow so much you're stretched so much more when things are difficult. And the easy times, they don't stretch you at all. They don't really push you to dig deeper, to find, what's real, what's true inside of you, what gets you on, like the distractions of life are so easy to fall victim to when you're feeling great, excuse me, or at least feeling normal. And when things are tough, it's you really have to kind of dig deep. Like distractions just don't cut it, like friendships and movies and all these things, especially when you're sick or when you're depressed or anything like that. Like they don't really do it. You still indulge in them just because it gets you by, but you still end up thinking a lot more about like what's really important to you and what's what you have at the base of yourself that's continuing on, and yeah, so that idea has kind of been bubbling up in me a lot, and I just it made me realize like I am very thankful for the difficult times in my life, the trying times, and I've had plenty of them. And when I look back over them, sometimes it's easy enough to just be like, oh, well, those were dark times, and now I'm in good times, and just put it in the past. But I think it's important to honor those things. And when I started thinking about some of the more challenging moments in my life, I also looked, and like those were the times when I really, really redefined myself and really just pulled something out of me that gave me a new perspective, and gave me a new direction in life. A lot of times, that was one of the big things. Excuse me. I've had a lot of new beginnings, if you will, and I've kind of built myself up from what I was, and kind of rediscovered who I was, and just kind of found new paths because of those difficult times. And a couple of them in particular, especially when I was younger and I left home, left my comfort zone and started traveling, and went out on the road with really no plan and no idea what I was doing, but I just knew that I needed something different. I needed to start fresh and discover things anew. And I got myself into a world of trouble and got myself into all kinds of crazy situations. And it was multiple years of bouncing around and dealing with addictions and dealing with just crazy relationships and sadness, depression, all those things. But it also, each one of those little moments kind of brought me to a different point of realization in my life about who I was and what I actually wanted. And I had to go through those tough times to realize that. And when it comes to my creative life, I've had so many ups and downs. And one of the like hallmarks of, in my mind, of my creative journey has been rediscovering myself and kind of starting fresh with something new, and approaching a different style of music, or approaching a different form of art, or whatever it is. It's always come from a difficult period of transition in my life. And recently, where I've been at with my creativity, it's been so interesting, because I put this last year has been so defining for me musically, and with this podcast and my writing and getting things published and all this stuff. And it's so easy to look at it and the normal perspective of like, oh yes, I'm doing things and I'm getting things done and it's great. But I'm also, when I dig beneath that and I look at the driving forces of it, there was a lot of insecurities. There was a lot of judgments. There was a lot of just negative energy that kind of pushed me into it. And not anyone's fault but my own, of course. But I was still, even now, I'm still kind of at this point where I'm like, I have to really dig deep in order to put things out, and have to to deal with social media, and to put all the effort into this podcast, and to book gigs and all these things. Like there's this like strain inside of me, because I want the instant gratification. I want the immediate results. I want the fruits of my labor, and the fruits do come, but it's over a long time frame, usually like a big period of time, months, sometimes years. And it always is pushing me to like really reassess my values, and to see what I'm actually grateful for in the moment. Because I can't say that sitting down and doing a podcast is like bringing me any kind of gratification other than the immediate, I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no monetary value to it or anything like that. And a lot of times I don't even know, who's listening. And when I think about it, it can get me down to put in that kind of energy within. But if I really look deeper, I can see that like it's this timeline of progression, and like, I don't know, I can really get into it and look and when I push myself to go beyond that and just put out content just because, and write new songs, whatever it is, practice, um, if I don't look at it like right in the immediate moment of doing it and look at that sense of instant gratification and I just do it for the sake of doing it, the timeline expands. And, I can look back at this last year and be like, man, I'm so grateful for the people that have reached out to me, or the guests that have come onto the show, or the songs that I've written, or the music, the shows that we've played, all this stuff that is, it has happened, but in the moment, it's really hard to like reflect on that. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying not to ramble on about it too much, but basically there's a lot that gets overlooked when you're focused on the immediate and focused on that instant gratification. And the difficult times are really some of the most beautiful times. It's just like being sick over Thanksgiving. Like it's hard to look at that and be grateful for, but at the same time, it's like my family, we got to have that moment together, and my daughter and I laying down and watching that movie together, feeling sick, but she just laying on my chest, and we basically hugged through that whole movie, and it was just a really special kind of moment that when you're feeling crappy, it's easy to overlook that. But years from now, I'll probably look back at that moment and be like, man, that was a really special time. And and this sickness that I'm dealing with, this bronchitis, perhaps, it's been trying. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks now. I haven't been able to sing or anything like that, and it's always difficult when you want to do something and you're used to doing something and you can't do that anymore. And like practicing and all these things, it's been really hard. But it's also given me a little bit of giving me a time for rest and reflection. To be able to think about these kind of things, and it is a powerful thing. And it brings me to another point of like the difficulties in the larger context of life. The crazy things going on in the world today, the shootings and the fires in California, and all I just read this thing about the climate change report that our president is denying, and all these things that keep building and building and building. And the more I read it, the more confused and sad and angry I am that we are so blind, seemingly. And it makes me wonder, where are we going to go? What is the future for my daughter going to look like, for her kids, for generations to come? And will there be generations to come, and it's so easy to get sucked into that and get all kinds of bent out of shape. But in I'm looking at that, I'm like, can I be thankful? Can I find gratitude in this? And man, it is a hard practice, and it's brought up some very interesting things for me. Just trying to be like, can I be grateful for where we are as a species? Can I find a sense of gratitude? And I'll be honest, it's very difficult, especially when it comes to environmental things. That is one of the most challenging things for me, looking at the earth and seeing what we're doing to it. And I put a lot of energy into trying to be conscious with the way I interact with the earth and the things that I do as a consumer, and as a parent. There's a lot of waste that goes into young kids, and it's, if you have kids, you understand. If you don't, maybe you won't understand this, but it's a challenging thing to constantly have to like make sacrifices and say like, this is better than this, but it's still not very good, and I'm constantly thinking about these things. And when I sit down and I reflect on it, and I think about trying to be grateful, I got to dig deep, but I really do. This morning I was just thinking about it, and gratitude maybe even isn't the right word, just because it almost seems selfish. Like I am looking for some kind of personal satisfaction or something, or some kind of justification. It doesn't really feel right, but I do feel I can always find a sense of appreciation for what the people who really are trying, the people who really do care and are making great efforts to do things socially or environmentally. And there are lots of people doing amazing things out there. It's so buried in the news and so hidden by the greater agenda that's going on. And that those are the kind of things that make me kind of turn back and think like, okay, there are good people doing good things. Like, yes, the world is in a terrible state, and everything seems to be going crazier than it ever has been. But at the same time, I feel like the state of things is also what's waking so many people up. And it's hard to acknowledge this if you're not surrounded by those kind of people and seeing the great things. But I really am inspired a lot of times by my guests on this show, or by people that I know, or by stories that I read. And and I think like would that kind of effort, would that kind of human devotion and sacrifice to the earth or to the cause in general for human existence, would that exist without the trying times? And it's tricky. It's tricky. It's definitely a difficult thing to weigh and to justify. But when I dig deep enough, I can find a sense of gratitude. And I think that that's one of the most important things that we can have is a sense of being grateful for what we have, for where we are, regardless, because if we lose that, then there's not much left to hope for. It's going to go downhill quick. And being in the position of, being a parent and being somebody who has lots of responsibilities in life that can't just like go off and do protests or, like join the Peace Corps or something that, like these great big actions that I'd like to do. Those little ones do inspire me to say like the little bits that I can do really do matter. And as an artist, as a musician, like trying to put my energy into that, it doesn't matter if there's millions of people listening or a handful of people at a coffee shop. Like if I have some kind of positivity, some kind of loving energy to put out there that'll inspire others, that little bit is enough. And it's if all of us can do that, if we can find that sense of gratitude, enough gratitude to make us, give us a sense of drive, to put us towards action instead of inaction, like falling into depression and despair is not, there's no productivity into that. You got to honor those states, they happen. But for me, I need something to keep pushing me, to keep motivating me to do stuff like this and to talk about these kind of things and to write the music that I write and to share that with people, because I know how much it means to me if I see a piece of art or if I hear a song or I read a poem that is truly inspired and that is embodying this kind of idea of gratitude and response to the world, and it motivates me. So I want to do the same thing for other people. And I was thinking about writing a blog post about this and just talking about gratitude. And I actually looked and I had already written something about gratitude earlier this year. I think it was in the spring. And I'm going to read it for you just because it's, I like to contribute something to this talk and not just be ranting. But this is about a particular incident that happened some months ago. And honestly, I kind of forgot about it. I kind of forgot about that feeling and what provoked it. And it was a very simple thing, but it makes me, this is another thing. It's just like when you create things, when you make art, when you put things out there, just not even worrying about who is listening, it's there, it's this own entity. It has its own life. And even if it's just you, you can go back to it and refer to it and get that inspiration all over again. And this just happened with me with this blog post. It was really nice to stumble upon it and remember that feeling of just being like so grateful for my life and for the events of my day and just simple things like that. And I hope that you guys will find that in yourselves and just be inspired to put things out there, creatively, spiritually, whatever it is that you do, that you can remind yourself, remind others that there is a lot of good in the world and there are beautiful things to be grateful for. So I'm going to read this and close it up. So yeah, this was in April of this year, and it was just called The Power of Gratitude. As far as I can tell, one of the fundamental elements that is required in order to live a joyful and balanced life is gratitude. According to many of the spiritual traditions from around the world, Cultivating an authentic sense of gratitude is one of the ways we can begin to see through the ever present veil which keeps us from acknowledging the true radiance of life. It helps us develop a sensitivity that our fast paced world numbs us to, and through this sensitive observation, we learn to recognize what has been present all along. But this point leads to an inevitable question: how exactly do we live a life of gratitude? I have found myself asking this question a lot over the years, especially when times are tough. I wonder, how can I be grateful even when I'm feeling morose and dejected? And maybe an even more important question is, how on earth is gratitude going to make me feel better or allow me to find balance? This really is a difficult question because in our culture, gratitude is more of a response than a state of being. We first need to receive something in order to release this well-guarded feeling. The idea of just living in gratitude and being thankful for everything in life, exactly how it is such a foreign concept that we generally just dismiss it as idealistic or Pollyanna. I really do believe that this is an attainable state, though, and I had an experience just today that gave me a glimpse of what living in gratitude might look like. It happened while I was at work, in the midst of some outdoor physical labor. I'm a landscaper and a handyman, and despite the many upsides of working with my hands and having a close relationship to the earth, there are also a lot of downsides, and it's usually pretty easy to focus on the latter. The weather sucks. The materials you are working with are heavy or smelly or covered in poison ivy. The clients you are working for are wealthy homeowners who just want their yards to look pretty but have no concern for the health of the planet. You get the idea. But today I had a moment of clarity that cut through all that stuff and allowed me to look directly at what I was doing and to remember how precious a single moment can be. I was gazing at the trees in front of me and was watching the leaves sway in the nice warm breeze, while the sun melted like butter upon the mountains that surrounded them. The ground smelled rich and damp from the recent rains. The grasses and shrubs were bursting with the vibrant colors of early spring. The birds were chirping and twittering with the delightful song of new beginnings. It was magic. The environment wasn't any different from most of the other days I had been there, but somehow I found myself lost in it. The weather wasn't perfect, but it seemed exactly as it should be. The job I was doing wasn't all that exciting, but I was happy to have it. The circumstances of my life were no better or worse than they have ever been, but somehow I could see that it was totally perfect the way it is. I suddenly found myself saying thank you, out loud, but to no one in particular. It just bubbled up and out of me like some underground mountain spring. It actually made me laugh when I said it, and I began wondering where it came from and what provoked it. Even as I probed further and tried to find the origin of my thanks, I found myself staring into empty space. I was simply feeling grateful for being alive. Somehow, I unwittingly found myself peeking behind the veil of my everyday judgments and staring directly into the face of pure existence. It was so simple and unremarkable, but it was also indescribably beautiful. Just recognizing that I was a tiny piece in the great jigsaw puzzle of the all was enough to feel a deep sense of peace and joy. Obviously, this was just a fleeting experience that was quickly replaced with thoughts and judgments, but it was enough to make me realize the true power of gratitude. It has the power to renew and to energize even the most mundane of tasks, and can open our eyes to a beauty that we so often overlook. There is magic all around us, and all that is required to see it is a willingness to stop and look. Living in gratitude isn't about transcending the obstacles in everyday life and constantly dwelling in some angelic realm. It's about paying attention to the little things that are always present but so rarely appreciated. It's about increasing our sensitivity and applying a moment-to-moment awareness that allows us to become the bridge which connects heaven to earth. Yeah, it's just reading back over that's really cool. Just remembering that moment, it was so simple. Just seemingly mundane, and then all of a sudden I just had this shift, and it was just, I had chills and just had this like rush of energy in my gut and came up to my heart and felt so good. I remember just standing there and being so appreciative. And those moments come, somewhat frequently. I try and, remain present as often as I can, and even in difficult times, like in the midst of work or sickness or trying moments with my relationships and things like that, those moments are there just to be grateful for what is right in front of you. It doesn't take some special occasion. It doesn't take a holiday. It doesn't take, big gatherings of friends and family and delicious food and, a bunch of wine and beer and all that good stuff. It doesn't take that. Gratitude is always at our fingertips. And so, yeah, I hope that you guys can appreciate that and find all kinds of stuff to be grateful for. And thanks for listening. I don't want to go on too much more, but I just wanted to keep it short and simple. But I got some really great guests coming up in the weeks to come. I might be taking a week off. I'm doing a week-long silent retreat in the first week of December, so I'm not sure I'll have anything put out. But I'm going to do my best to get something organized and set up so I can have it ready. But if not, you'll know why. As always, I hope you guys will check out everything I have going on my website, creativeawakeningnow.com. And if you guys want to support the podcast, I would be so grateful if you would just leave a rating or review, share it with your friends, let people know about it, and help me grow this, help me reach out and bring some other great, inspiring guests on. Thank you. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for anyone who listens to this show and anyone who reaches out and says that it means something to them. It's really been helpful, giving me energy to keep putting it out there. So much love, and we will talk to you guys soon. Lessons in falling morning.